Hi chess fans, welcome to this video. We will look at a game between Magnus Carlsen with white and Sergei Karjakin with black, and the game was played at the Sinquefield Cup this year. Carlsen played knight f3, um, a very flexible move, taking control of some squares in the center. Karjakin replies symmetrically, and Carlsen plays g3 with the idea of bringing the bishop to g2 and still maintaining some flexibility as to whether he wants to play d4 or c4. Karjakin replies with c5, and the idea is to take away a square of the knight and to bring the knight on b8 to c6 and then play e5, taking advantage of the fact that white is at the moment not controlling the e4 square, and also taking advantage of the fact that white cannot play d4 because black has played c5. So this is a setup against this ready opening. Another setup would be to, in this position, play something like this. Okay, Carlsen continued bishop to g2, and Karjakin continues with this setup. It's maybe interesting to note that white has a very solid setup here, but has basically ceded the center to black. And Karjakin continues with the plan of e5, now threatening to attack this knight here on f3. So, and that's the point why white is playing e4. And what do you think? Is it bad or good that white has now caged in his bishop here on g2? So let's have a look at how the game continued. Karjakin played d6 and Carlsen played d3, and now it becomes apparent that it's actually okay to play e4 to prevent black from playing e4, the e4 push, because essentially white has a sort of King's Indian setup with the plan of at some point moving the knight away and pushing for the f4 break. So e4 is actually a move that keeps all options open, and the bishop is not necessarily caged in here in the long term. So black has to solve the problem of this bishop here, which is a little bit caged in here. It can still go to e7 or to g7. Karjakin plays g6, signaling that he wants to play the bishop to g7. And Carlsen takes control of the square b4 with a3, bishop g7, c3. So white has a nice control here, preventing counterplay from black. Castle, and c3 and a3 were also preparing b4. So in this formation here, white has a nice pawn structure here, and in addition to the push f4 and h4, it will emerge that black has the center here, but white also has now the option of different types of breaks here with c4 or d4. So it's a very flexible structure, and you can see by the number of pawn breaks that white has that this is actually quite an interesting structure. Okay, in addition, white simply threatens to play b5, chasing the knight away, which doesn't have so many good squares. So Karjakin played a6, and maybe the idea is actually also to play b5 himself. Carlsen develops the knight, and Karjakin played b5, replying to white's pawn structure with a similarly flexible structure here. And now have a look at this position. What could be the plan for white? In the next move, Carlsen played a very deep move, rook b1, and so what is the purpose of this move? And maybe in this position you might not have played this move. It's also not a move the engine suggests, but what could be white's plan? Okay, so as we will see in the next moves, Carlsen's plan is So basically, what to do with all these pieces. And now that the pawn structure is sort of set up, what to do with all the pieces. And it turns out white has the strategic plan to play knight to b3, bishop to e3, the queen up to d2, the rook comes over here, the rook stays here. And with this, white has achieved a configuration of pieces that allows him to do all different types of breaks, and that's very flexible to react to what black is doing. And also, it's very flexible to react to any counterplay that black might have. So, for example, one piece of counterplay that black has is to take here. White could then retake, and the rook would be in an excellent square to protect this pawn. Another piece of counterplay would be if white develops a knight here to play bishop to e6, and then the rook again would be in a good position to protect the knight here. So in this position, white could go about implementing his plan by, for example, starting moving the knight here and then taking it from there. But Carlsen is playing rook b1, which is also a move that does not immediately reveal his strategy to his opponent. So I think that's a very, very instructive and interesting move strategically. Okay, Karjakin has also a very interesting plan. And he played knight to d7. And the idea is to reroute the knight to the square on a4. Then maybe take here, move the rook over here into pressure on this pawn. And at the same time, this knight is also vacating the square on f6, which gives some more value to the bishop and also prepares a potential f5 push. So it's a very strategic phase of the game. The pawn structure is set up, and now both sides discuss what is the best configuration of pieces. So white continues implementing his plan, knight b3. Black takes and continues implementing his plan of moving the knight over here and then pushing some pressure here on this pawn. And you can see that the rook now moved away from this a1 square and becomes more and more useful here. Knight b6, preparing to hop to a4, bishop e3. Continuing with this, the putting the pieces on the ideal square, bishop e6. Now the rook really becomes useful here. Where should the bishop go instead? If the bishop went here and white continues implementing his plan, the bishop is not so useful on the square on b7. It's more useful here because here it exerts pressure on both sides of the board and allows black more active plans. Moving the bishop here also doesn't disrupt white's plan in any way, and the bishop is always prone to attacks and doesn't have so many squares to retreat to. So bishop e6 is a move that Carlsen probably also foresaw, and again it's a move that justifies moving the rook to b1. Okay, black continues the plan of putting pressure to c3, and now there's a lot of errors here, but I really find it very interesting. White has now implemented his strategic plan and put the pieces here, and so the rook is very good. As we have discussed, this rook here is protecting this pawn here. The knight has a lot of interesting squares. The queen and the bishop have a nice battery. This bishop is very active here on the square as well. The queen is in the center and very flexible. And white has now a good position to implement all types of pawn breaks, both here, the c4 and the d5, the c4 and the d4 pawn break, but also the typical Nimzo, the typical King's Indian plans of pushing for f4 or h4 break. So it's a very, very, I think, very good position for white already. Okay, black develops the rook to e8, and white, they're also very instructive, doesn't hurry for anything, just poses the problem to black. Okay, so what do you do about this pawn push here? Black just continues with his plan, putting some pressure on c3. And now white does the pawn push to c5. That's one of the options that black has of all the different pawn pushes, and turns out after the knight has vacated control of the square, this is a very good pawn push. It potentially opens up the rook as well, and black first reacts by putting a pawn to block h5, to block an h5 push by white. White also doesn't hurry, moves the king to a safer square. Black doesn't hurry, putting the bishop now on the square, and after white has played h4, the square is potentially a nice square for the bishop. And well, maybe one thing that's interesting to note in this position here, black never wants to play b takes c himself, because in this position here, these pawns are very strong. This is a weakness, this is a weakness, and these pawns can be pushed at will. And there is no pawn here that could be used to be pushed forward and sort of break the coordination of these two pawns. This is a very favorable pawn structure for white, and all of white's pieces are supporting these two pawns, so they're very strong. So because of that, after this pawn push, it's always up to white to at some point exchange here at a point that's favorable. And after Karjakin played bishop g4, vacating the bishop from this line, Carlsen felt it's a good idea to exchange these pieces. And the point now of the strategic plan for white is very, very deep and very, very interesting and instructive. Let's have a look. White plays knight to a5, posing the question to the knight. And if the knight takes here, this pawn would become weak, and this pawn would be quite strong in combination with the bishop. So knight a5 is kind of asking the question to this knight, and black moves the knight to a natural square. And now black has a very interesting setup. This knight here is in the center of the board, and if it were ever to be exchanged, and black would retake with this pawn coordinates with the bishop, who now has more space. It asks questions to this bishop where it goes, and it also allows the knight to move to a nice square here where it can, for example, attack the rook, protect this pawn, and do all other types of good things. So this is sort of like the purpose that these black pieces have, and you could argue that's a pretty good coordination of the pieces. And then you got the nice bishop here, and the rooks and the queen, they are protecting the pawns here, so looks good. But now watch what Carlsen does to deal with this problem. What can white do to counter black's plan after knight d4? Okay, very interesting. So basically the whole question comes down to, if this knight here gets exchanged, which it has to at some point, and this knight gets entrenched here, how can I make sure that the value of this knight is as small as possible? And now white does a few operations which actually are all very logical with this purpose in mind. First, white exchanges a rook and places rook to c1, the queen has to move. Operation done. The result of this operation was that if the knight ever goes here, this rook here is not attacked by the knight anymore. Alright, so that's good. The rook also has the c-file now. Okay, second operation. If white takes and the pawn is retaken, then this pawn is protected by this bishop. So second operation that Carlsen played is, well, actually first Carlsen actually took here, and now, so this was actually what happened in the game, but now the second operation is to move the bishop to h6 and offering an exchange to this bishop. And if this bishop was exchanged, the issue is that this pawn can be attacked and become very weak. It can be attacked by it can be attacked by the knight here on c6, which would attack the pawn on d4. It can also be potentially attacked by the queen on the dark squares. And once this knight is attacked, it undermines the position of the knight hopping to c3 as well. So black does not want to exchange, and so Karjakin moves the bishop back. But this, of course, highlights a little bit the potential weakness of the dark squares as well. And so, in the end, what white has achieved is that the whole value of this knight coming here, with the rook being exchanged, with the bishop being pushed back, with this exchange here, the whole value has been reduced. And so what to think of this position positionally? Even though the engine says it's an equal position, white's pieces have much more clear potential than black's pieces. Thanks to the operations that white has done, he's at the moment owning the c5. The knight can be activated by going to c6, which is a square that white controls. These pawns here are weak, and so is this bishop. It doesn't have so many squares. White can at some point play f3, and then the bishop is kind of blocked. And most importantly as well, this king is super safe here. All the white squares are protected by the bishop, and black does not have so many resources to penetrate, for example, by attacking this pawn. On the other hand, this black king is very weak. And so even though the engine says the position is equal, I think white has a huge advantage here already in this position. So how does Carlsen deal with this? First, Carlsen activates the rook, and also before black has the opportunity to play knight c3, makes sure the rook gets out and is not blocked by this knight. Karjakin plays knight to c6, and here again I've highlighted a little bit the weaknesses. And here maybe one thing to highlight is this knight, well, it is now having the safe guarded position here, but you know, what is it really doing here? Thanks to the operations of white, there's not really much going on here. The game is now happening over here. So yes, black has managed to achieve his goal, but what is it really worth now? Okay, Carlsen continued by highlighting the weakness of the bishop on g4, who moved back. And all the moves come with tempo now. White is attacking the pawn on d6, and black now has to exchange the bishop. We were talking about the function of this bishop, of making sure that this pawn cannot get undermined. And now the pressure is so strong that black is offering the exchange of the bishop himself. So white exchanges, and now pushes immediately f4 to undermine this pawn chain, and thereby also this knight, which is already attacked by the king and the rook. So black tries to get some counterplay and attack the b4 pawn, and white counters this by blocking the way with the rook, and the rook is also at the same time attacking this pawn and making some space for the knight to come into the game. So all of these operations highlight the high potential and the strength of the white pieces that just a few moves ago was maybe a bit hidden, but you can see that all of the pieces suddenly harmonize very well and become very, very active. Okay, black is trying to force matters, but white is actually happy to exchange the rook, because this bishop here is not really now doing anything in the game. All of the structural problems of black still remain, the pawns remain weak, the king remains weak, and this bishop now is a tactical liability because it doesn't coordinate with any other piece. The knight will be undermined, and the bishop does not coordinate with any other piece and can be maybe attacked. So the knight now jumps in and becomes super active, attacking the queen, and now taking this pawn, and black can retake this pawn. Okay, so what about this position here? Black now has a passed pawn, but white has potentially a very strong attack on the weak king on the dark squares, and the knight and the queen are very good attackers. This is a tactical liability. This king is very safe, and this pawn and this knight become potentially very weak. So the essential feature of this position now is really that white can push a king attack on the king, and all the pieces here are not really able to help so much. And black hopefully can get some counterplay by pushing this pawn, but this is a long way. Okay, but in this way, white immediately tries to open the position with f5 and opening also the diagonal for the queen. The queen can now come in all types of positions. This pawn is also now threatening to push forward, and then it will already be very quickly checkmate. So you can see this move highlights very much the weakness of black's position. Black vacates the square to push the pawn forward, attacks the knight, and brings the queen in for the defense. A very multi-purpose move, but white simply moves back, and all the threats that white has still remain. In fact, now the threat of white playing e5 followed by f6 and bringing the queen in for the attack is so strong that black had to play g takes f. I'm not really sure if there's a better move. If black simply ignored it and played for counterplay, white can come in, queen to g5, and if so threatening a lot of things, actually threatening a lot of things. Let's just say black was continue to pushing here. So for example, white can play f takes g, and after f6 the king just becomes very, very weak, and let's say black just ignored all of this and pushed the king forward. This would already be mate. So black has to do something against this, so maybe queen e7, but then white has a number of defensive resources, bringing the queen over or bringing the knight over. This basically stops any threat of the pawn converting here. So the white attack is very, very fast. So after g takes f, white brings in the queen for the check, and now you can see that queen g6 is not possible because of the double attack on the bishop and the king. So that highlights why the bishop is a tactical liability. Black has to play king h7, and now e5 just highlights very nicely all the weaknesses in black's camp. It attacks the queen with tempo. It also opens up some movement for the bishop at some later point. Black hopes to exchange queens, but of course white denies with a double attack here on the bishop and on the pawn. Bishop moves away, and after check, the queen takes, again with tempo attacking the knight. The knight has no better square to move all the way to the side. And in this position, Carlsen played knight h3 with the idea of bringing the knight over to f4, where it's even stronger than g5. And the point is that now even the counterplay that black maybe had here in this position to push the f-pawn forward is just simply stopped. So for example, if in this position here, let's say black just moves the king, then the knight can jump in here, and yeah, in this position here, white can simply move the king, win this pawn with the queen, and push this pawn forward. This is basically the plan for white in almost all of the positions, and at the same time white has a cursor here that black cannot penetrate. So that's actually why after knight h3 Karjakin resigned. Okay, very, very interesting and instructive game. I really just want to highlight that in this position here, a lot of how this game was won is simply by white having the superior strategic plan. So black has the plan of moving the knight over here, the rook over here, the bishop here, and then planting knights here on these squares. And white has the plan of moving the queen over and then having all these different types of pawn breaks. And it turns out that White's strategy is much superior, probably also because it's much more flexible. White has a lot of strategic setups to choose from after positioning his pieces in this way, whereas Black really has to play, once the knight is committed to come over to a4, Black has to play for the plan of moving the knight over and pushing the pawn and utilizing the bishop in this way, and White can just react to this in the very best way and position all his pieces without rushing. So this game was really a game that was won strategically, and even though material was equal, it was a very, very clean and clear win by Carlsen, and a very, very interesting and instructive game to watch. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you next time.